In a world filled with rush, noise, and constant demands, there is an immense power waiting to be discovered within every human being, the power of serenity and calm. The power of serenity and calm in your life. By William George Jordan invites us on a transformative journey toward inner stillness, a space where external storms subside and the mind finds clarity. This text transports you to a realm where serenity is not just an ideal, but a powerful practice that transforms your daily life. Through profound reflections and timeless teachings, Jordan reveals how cultivating calm can strengthen your spirit, sharpen your mind, and pave the way to true happiness and lasting peace. Imagine waking each day with the certainty that, no matter the external circumstances, you hold the key to maintaining harmony and balance. This text is not merely a guide, but a reminder that true strength lies in inner tranquility. Prepare to discover a new level of personal power and emotional freedom. Chapter 1. The Majesty of Calm. Serenity is the rarest attribute in human existence. It represents the firmness of a grand character in harmony with itself and its aspirations. It is the ethical environment of an autonomous, self-reliant, and self-regulated life. Serenity symbolizes a union of vision, unshakable faith, and a conscious readiness to act in the face of adversity. The Sphinx does not embody true serenity. Its stony state is not serenity, it is the twilight, the pause of all impulses. In contrast, no one lives their existence with more depth, vigor, and alertness than one who possesses serenity. The fatalist is not at peace. He is the slave, fearful of his circumstances, irremediably subjected to his current situation, with a bold indifference to his future. He perceives his life as a boat drifting aimlessly in the waters of time, lacking orientation, a map, and a clear destination. His recognized inferiority before the universe is reflected in his life of permanent resignation. He does not represent serenity. The serene individual has clearly defined the path of his existence. He always steers his ship through rain, fog, darkness, storms, risks, and hidden obstacles, always alert and ready to face them. What keeps him serene is understanding that, in these challenges of the journey, he needs to think clearly and keep a cool head. His mission is simply to do his best every day with what he has. He will never doubt or falter. Even if he must momentarily veer off course, he will never allow himself to drift aimlessly. He will always return to the right path, always heading toward his destination. When and how he arrives does not concern him. He feels at peace, confident that he has given his best effort. If it seems that his efforts are in vain, he still maintains tranquility. No being is granted the ability to foresee the future of their existence. The ultimate purpose is that God grants always new beginnings, new clarity, and new days, to apply the best of one's knowledge. Tranquility is internal. It is the calm that emanates from the depths of our being. The turmoil of the storms only affects the surface of the ocean. Its influence only reaches about 200 or 300 meters deep. Beyond that, an absolute stillness reigns. To be ready for life's great challenges, we must learn to live in peace. Peace is the highest symbol of self-discipline. When daily worries and tensions disturb you, begin to overwhelm you, and you become irritated due to the fray, calm your mind. Pause, relax for a moment, and allow tranquility and serenity to take control. If you let these annoying external influences conquer you, you are admitting your weakness before them. By allowing them to control you, analyze the factors that upset you one by one and apply all the determination of your being to them. You will see that, little by little, they will evaporate like mists before the radiant sun. The luminosity of peace will then illuminate your spirit, and the revitalizing sensation of renewed energy may be the beginning of understanding the ultimate tranquility that is achievable for you. Thus, in a crucial moment of your existence, when you are faced with a harsh adversity, when the foundations of your dreams and efforts seem to crumble in an instant, you will show courage. At that moment, you will be able to stay serene, observe without despair or sorrow the remnants of your aspirations, what you built with effort and faith in your soul, and with a resolved voice, you will say, "So be it. I will rebuild it." When malicious and defamatory speech or persecution born of envy momentarily incites you to respond in kind, when for a brief moment you are careless enough to seek revenge, maintain serenity. When the heron is harassed by its adversary, the eagle does not flee in despair. It remains serene, assuming an elevated posture, and waits silently, firmly facing its attacker. With the momentum with which the eagle strikes, the majestic king of the birds is often wounded by the calm and sharp beak of the heron. The means that man employs to damage another's reputation often backfires upon himself. No one in the world has ever attempted to harm another without receiving harm themselves in some form, somewhere, at some time. The only offensive tool that nature seems to know is the boomerang. Nature keeps meticulous records noting every action, and although it eventually settles all accounts, it does not always do so immediately. For the serene man, the idea of vengeance is so beneath him that he cannot even consider it. When wronged, he does not retaliate. He cloaks himself in the noble mantle of peace and continues his path with tranquility. When death touches those we love deeply, our energy freezes and the light of our lives dims. In these moments, the tranquility we have cultivated over the years becomes our refuge, our reserve of strength. The most subtle temptation is the apparent success of the wicked. It requires moral courage to observe without flinching the material prosperity of dishonest people, to see politicians rising through deceit and corruption, virtue in rags and vice in velvet, ignorance at the price of gold and knowledge at a discount. For those truly tranquil, these enigmas are not enticing. They live their lives as best they can without concern for justice, which must be entrusted to omniscience. When calm becomes an intrinsic part of oneself, radiating its presence, a great progress has been made. Serenity does not acquire itself. It is the result of a series of virtues. What the world and people need is to elevate their standard of living, recognize the privilege and dignity of life, and have a nobler conception of individuality. With this deep sense of calm, one can withdraw from the noise and confusion of the world. These only come as weak rumbles or the distant bustle of a city for those who are high above. The tranquil individual does not isolate himself selfishly, but he cares deeply for the well-being of humanity. His calm is his sacred refuge to gather strength to live in the world. He understands that the true glory of individuality, the pinnacle of self-control, is the majestic calm. Chapter 2. The Whip of America. The inaugural sermon of humanity occurred in creation itself. It constituted a divine protest against haste. It was a celestial teaching about the perfect law, the perfect plan, the perfect order, and the perfect method. Meticulously planned, organized, and executed days of labor preceded the deserved rest. Whether we interpret this story literally or figuratively, as literal days or eras spanning millions of years, it matters little compared to the lesson we must draw. Nature is intrinsically patient, and little is affected by haste. Every stage of its work exhibits careful planning, serenity, reliability, and an absence of urgency. Haste always denotes a lack of a defined method, confusion, and impatience for rapid growth. The Tower of Babel, the first skyscraper in the world, collapsed due to haste. The builders confused their ambitious arrogance with true inspiration. There were too many workers without a mastermind. They attempted to compensate for the lack of direction with an abundance of hands. This is an inherent characteristic of haste, trying to make energy compensate for the absence of a clear plan, and the result is always as futile as trying to quickly turn an ordinary horse into a noble steed. Haste is falsely emulated by speed. The latter pursues an ideal, a precise goal that must be reached by the fastest and most direct means available. Haste relies on a single compass to guide it, and in accordance with it defines its route. Its mantra is, I must speed up. I will use 3 compasses. I will follow all of them. Surely at least one will lead me to the right destination. But haste fails to realize that the slow and meticulous foundation is in the end the fastest. Haste has negatively affected more Americans than any other word in our lexicon of life. It is the scourge of America, and at the same time, it is both the cause and consequence of our high-pressure society. Haste cleverly adopts so many masks that its true identity is not always recognizable. Haste always demands the highest toll, and in most cases, the fruits never come to fruition. In the race for wealth, men often sacrifice time, energy, health, home, happiness, and honor, all that money cannot buy, and most importantly, what money will never be able to return. Haste is an enigma full of paradoxes. Businessmen, in their zeal to secure the future well-being of their families, often sacrifice the present happiness of their wives and children at the altar of haste. They forget that their role in the home must be more than just the man who pays the bills. They expect consideration and attention that they are not willing to give. We often hear a lot about the responsibilities of the wife toward her husband, but very little about the other side of the equation. We are told that the wife must greet her husband with a smile and a kiss, be sensitive to his moods, and always radiate sweetness and sunshine. Why this continuous adoration of the businessman? Why must a woman look shyly at her husband's face to gauge his mood? Hasn't she had her own day full of cares, responsibilities, and vigilance? Hasn't a mother's love been dealing with the complex issues and concerns of the home and the education of children that a wife's love silently tries to resolve? Is the man, then, the more vulnerable sex who needs to be pampered and treated with as much care as if he were a wound seeking to avoid contact with the world? In their pursuit of ambition to satisfy a lifelong dream, men often throw to the wind honor, truth, and generosity. Politicians sometimes dare to stand idly by as they watch a city become contaminated with dirty water, until an agreement is reached about a hydraulic project, even if it involves putting an army at risk. This becomes a mere incident in the race toward wealth. We are in the greenhouse era, where the element of natural growth is sidelined in favor of the greenhouse and brute force. Nature watches tolerantly as it says, "Thus far you may go, but no further, my foolish children. Let's do this quickly." If you like the content of this channel and find it helpful, you could click the subscribe button. This will help another person join this community. Wanting to help others shows that you are one of us. Thank you, and let's return to the audiobook. The current educational system is a monumental institution dedicated to haste. Children are forced to go through a set of studies that encompass the vast circle of human knowledge. They are flooded with everything that the ambitious ignorance of the age can force into their minds. But they are taught everything except the essentials, how to use their senses and how to think. Their minds are crammed with a vast amount of undigested information, and the ruthless and barbaric process continues. You observe it until it seems you can't stand it any longer, and instinctively you rise and exclaim, "Enough! This modern massacre of the innocent must end." Education responds with a condescending smile, waving its hand toward its thousands of knowledge prisons across the country, and says, "Who are you to question our sacred educational system?" Education is in a rush, despite failing to achieve in 15 years what it could accomplish in half the time with more effective methods. It should not boast too much. Incompetence is not a reason for pride. They push children through 100 textbooks, then onto bad health, then into institutions, and finally into life, all with stunned minds, unformed and ill-prepared for the true responsibilities of life. Haste is a fatal blow to tranquility, dignity, and serenity. The courtesy of old disappeared with the arrival of haste. In modern times, haste is the source of dyspepsia. Amid the rush of our national life, fast food has become a widespread vice. The words fast food could be on thousands of gravestones in our cemeteries. Man forgets that he is the only being who truly eats, while the others merely feed. Why does he give up his right to enjoy food and join the line of simple diners? His self-respecting stomach reveals its discontent with indigestion. Then man must carry a bottle of pepsin pills in his vest pocket. He is nothing but another victim of this madness for speed. Haste is synonymous with nervous breakdown and is the direct path to nervous exhaustion. All that is great in life comes from slow growth. The newer, greater, higher, and nobler an achievement, the slower its development and the more solid its lasting success. Mushrooms may reach their fullness in a night, but oaks require decades. A fashion may have its peak in a few weeks, while a philosophy endures through generations and centuries. If you have conviction in your path, do not allow the opinion of the world, friends, or family to divert you from your goal, not even for a moment. Accept slow growth when necessary, knowing that results will come, just as we accept the long and lonely nights with the certainty that they will bring the morning. Let us eliminate the word haste from our lives. Nothing should be so important as to sacrifice our dignity and self-esteem. Let us cultivate calm, rest, serenity, and sweetness by doing our best, facing adversities with courage. Let us live our lives without letting the prosperity of the wicked or the envy of others disturb us. Let us not be impatient, upset by delays, worried about failures, fatigued by results, or weakened by opposition. Always look to the future with confidence and serenity, in harmony with ourselves, faithful to our ideals, moving steadily toward their resolution. Let us recognize that the word haste always undermines the truth, and strive more each day to replace it with calm and the rest of an authentic and noble life. Chapter 3. The Power of Personal Influence. The only responsibility that a man cannot evade in this life is one he rarely thinks about: his personal influence. The conscious influence of a man, when he strives to impress those around him, is often sadly limited. However, his unconscious influence, the silent and subtle radiation of his personality, the impact of his words and actions, even the details he rarely considers, are tremendous. At every moment of his life, he is exerting change to some degree upon the entire world. Every man generates an aura that affects everyone else. This influence operates so silently and unconsciously that a man may come to forget that it exists. All the forces of nature, such as heat, light, electricity, and gravity, are silent and invisible. We never see them directly. We are only aware of their existence through the effects they generate in all of nature. The wonders of what is visible become insignificant when compared to the majesty and greatness of the invisible. Even the sun, impressive as it is on its own, does not provide enough heat and light to sustain life on Earth. We depend on the stars for almost half of our light and warmth, and most of this vital source of energy comes from stars that are invisible, millions of kilometers away. In many ways, nature constantly leads us toward a deeper and sharper understanding of the power and wonder of the invisible. Every individual possesses a wonderful power in their hands, capable of exerting both good and evil. It is the silent, unconscious, and invisible influence of their life. This is simply the constant radiation of what a person truly is, not of what they pretend to be. Every human being, simply by existing, radiates sympathy, sadness, morbidity, cynicism, happiness, hope, or other numerous qualities. Life is a state of continuous emission and absorption. To exist is to radiate. To exist is to be a receiver of radiations. There are men and women whose presence seems to radiate the sun, joy, and optimism. One feels calm, revitalized, and renews their faith in humanity in their company. Then there are others who, in an instant, concentrate all your latent distrust, morbidity, and rebellion against life. Without knowing why, you become irritated and uneasy in their presence. They disorient you in the face of life and its challenges. Your moral compass is disturbed and dissatisfied, just like the magnetic needle of a ship is deflected when it approaches large iron ore mountains. There are men who advance through the current of life like icebergs, cold, reserved, inaccessible, and self-sufficient. In their presence, one involuntarily recoils within themselves, wondering who left the door open. These cold people exert a depressing influence on all who fall under the spell of their radiating frigidity. But there are also others who are warm, helpful, and genial, like the Gulf Stream, following their own course, flowing unperturbed in the ocean of colder waters. Their mere presence radiates warmth, life, and sunlight, the cheerful, stimulating breath of spring. There are men who resemble malignant, poisonous, depressing, and weakening swamps. By their mere presence, they make the atmosphere in their homes heavy, oppressive, and gloomy. The sound of children's games fades away and laughter freezes in their presence. They walk through life as if every day were a great funeral, and they were always the principal mourners. Yet, there are also other men who are like the ocean, constantly infusing vigor, stimulation, and vitality with their very presence. There are men who are sincerely kind-hearted, and this sincerity manifests in their presence. They display a remarkable interest in your well-being, but only when they need something. They can activate a smile of possession as suddenly as if it were connected to a hidden button in their clothes whenever it serves their purpose. Their voice emits a cordiality that years of practice may have turned into something almost natural, yet they never fully perform their role with absolute authenticity. Sometimes their masks fall, and their cunning cannot teach their eyes to reflect true honesty. Some people may teach others, but not all. There is a subtle power of revelation that makes us think, I can't explain how, but I know that man is not honest. A man cannot escape, even for a moment, from this radiation of his character, this constant weakening or strengthening of others. He cannot evade responsibility by arguing that it is unconscious influence. He can choose the qualities he would allow to radiate. He can cultivate sweetness, calm, trust, generosity, truth, justice, loyalty, and nobility. and make these qualities a vital part of his character. Through these qualities, he will constantly affect the world around him. Often honorable souls who try to live the best they can become discouraged by thinking that their contribution to the world is insignificant. Yet, those small, unnoticed actions may be part of a larger purpose. In 1797, William Godwin wrote Political Justice, a collection of revolutionary essays on morality and politics. This work influenced Thomas Malthus, who, in 1798, wrote his essay on the principle of population. In turn, this book inspired Charles Darwin for many years, culminating in 1859 with the publication of On the Origin of Species, the most influential book of the 19th century that revolutionized science. These are the three links in an influence that extended over 60 years. We could trace this genealogy of influence from Godwin, generation by generation, to the word or action of some shepherd in early Britain, who, while watching over his flock on the hills, lived a quiet life and died feeling he had done nothing to help the world. Men and women have responsibilities toward others and themselves. As for our own well-being, we must avoid living in an environment that prevents us from giving our best. If the fault lies with us, we must overcome it. If it is the negative influences of others that stifle our best impulses, we must distance ourselves from them whenever possible without abandoning our responsibilities. If moving is a mistake, then we must take meaningful steps to counteract those harmful influences. What matters is not what others do for us, but who they are to us. Just as we care for our plants, moving them from one window to another to provide them with proper warmth, light, air, and moisture, we should take care of ourselves in the same way. To exert our influence, it is essential to live according to our beliefs and practice our faith. A magnet does not attract iron as if it were iron. It must first turn the iron into another magnet before it can attract it. It is useless for a father to try to teach gentleness to his children if he himself is angry and irritable. A child who is told to be truthful but hears his father lie cunningly to avoid a small displeasure will not firmly embrace the truth. The father's words may say, "Don't lie," but the influence of his life says, "Lie." No one can isolate themselves to escape this constant power of influence, just as no red blood cell can reveal itself by leaving the bloodstream. No individual is so insignificant as to lack influence. The changes in our mood are recorded in the sensitive barometers of others' lives. We must always allow our influence to flow through human love and sympathy. We should not merely be an influence, but a source of inspiration. With our mere presence, we must be a fortress for the hungry souls around us. Chapter 4. The Dignity of Self-Confidence. Self-confidence is essential. Without it, it is as useless as a recipe without food. Self-confidence allows us to see individual possibilities, and self-sufficiency makes them a reality. Self-confidence perceives the potential in the uncarved block of marble. Self-sufficiency sculpts it. The self-sufficient individual always asserts, "No one can materialize my possibilities except myself. No one can influence me positively or negatively except myself." They forge their own salvation in financial, social, mental, physical, and moral terms. Life is an individual challenge that each person must solve for themselves. Nature does not accept substitutes or intermediaries. It deals directly with the individual. Nature constantly shows that one can be their best ally or their worst enemy, leaving the choice in the hands of each one. All the physical exercises in the world are worthless unless one forces the bars and weights to yield in strength and muscle in exchange for the time and effort invested. Muscles cannot be developed by sending someone else to the gym. The resources of the world are useless unless the individual takes what they need to overcome their weaknesses. All the religions of the world are, in the end, moral reflections and theories of salvation until the individual understands that they must save themselves by trusting in the law of truth as they perceive it, and living in harmony with it as much as possible. However, religion is not a comfortable Pullman car with cushioned seats where the individual only needs to buy a ticket and others do everything for them. In religion, as in all great things, the human being is bound to trust in themselves. They must accept any help offered, but they must live their own life. They should not be a mere passenger. They are the driver, and the train is their life. We must trust ourselves and live our own lives, or else we will wander aimlessly through existence, losing everything that is better, greater, and more divine. What others can do for us is offer us opportunities. We must always be ready to seize these opportunities when they arise, and seek them out, and create them when they don't, because if we don't, those opportunities will mean nothing to us. Life is a constant succession of opportunities, and their value depends on how we take advantage of them, whether for good or bad. Just as the alchemists of old sought an element to transmute metals into gold, the same happens with human character. Some individuals possess exceptional mental gifts and sharp spiritual discernment, but they fail in life due to the lack of a crucial element, self-confidence. This confidence would unite all their energies and turn them into strength and power. Those who lack self-sufficiency are prone to weakness, indecision, and doubt in their actions. They fear taking decisive steps because they fear failure. They constantly seek the advice of others or are too afraid to follow their own judgment. In their cowardice and arrogance, they attribute all their failures to others. They feel unvalued, unrecognized, or that society is subtly conspiring against them. Sometimes they even become vain, thinking that no one has experienced as much poverty, sadness, affliction, and failure as they have. On the other hand, those who trust themselves are constantly in search of overcoming their weaknesses, those that prevent them from achieving what they value most. They look within for the power to exist and understand that throughout history, the greatest people have faced illness, suffering, and pain. For them, defeat is just a step through a tunnel on their journey. They know that eventually they will emerge into the sunlight. The strength of a nation lies in its ability to be self-sufficient, in its ability to meet the needs of its people within its borders. If a nation, even with all its ports blocked, cannot provide what is necessary for life and continued progress from within, it becomes vulnerable, and it's only a matter of time before it must surrender. A nation's independence is directly related to its self-sufficiency and its ability to sustain itself from within. What is true for nations is also true for individuals. The history of nations is, in fact, the biography of individuals, amplified, intensified, multiplied, and projected into the past. History is the biography of a nation. Biography is the history of an individual. Therefore, the strongest individual in any trial, pain, or need is the one who can rely on their inherent strength and does not require the scaffolding of superficial sympathy to sustain themselves. They must always be self-sufficient. The wealth and prosperity of ancient Rome, which relied heavily on slaves to do the nation's work, ultimately led to its downfall. The constant dependence on war captives for daily tasks undermined the self-confidence of the nation and of individuals. The decline in self-confidence and the rise of idle comfort and luxury caused Rome, a nation of fighters, to become a nation of less resolute men than women. As we depend on others to do what we should do ourselves, our self-sufficiency weakens and our control over our lives diminishes. To achieve greatness, an individual must be self-sufficient, though not necessarily in everything. They must demonstrate self-sufficiency in the areas in which they wish to excel. This self-sufficiency is not about arrogance, but about bravery, about being alone, being like an oak tree rather than a reed. One must be prepared to offer support but not depend on it. To develop true self-sufficiency, one must understand from the start that life is a battle to be fought alone. You must be your own warrior. You cannot buy a replacement, get a pardon, or retire. Retirement in life only comes with death. The world is busy with its own concerns, sorrows, and joys, and pays little attention to others. The main key to success is self-confidence. If you want to learn to speak, you must place yourself in situations where communication is necessary. If you want to overcome shyness, you must interact with brilliant people no matter how challenging it may be. If you long for the power someone else possesses, do not envy their strength or waste energy wishing it were yours passively. Rather, emulate the process by which they acquired that power. Trust yourself, pay the price, and you will reach that same power. You must see yourself as an investment with unlimited potential and develop properly like a mine whose resources can only be discovered by digging down and extracting what is hidden inside. The development of an individual's self-sufficiency is achieved by constantly seeking to surpass oneself. We often try too hard to surpass others, but if we always strive to surpass our own past achievements, we move forward steadily and harmoniously in all areas of growth. Daniel Morel, who was once president of Cambria Railworks, a company with 7,000 employees and famous for its railroads worldwide, revealed the secret to his great success by saying, "We have no secret except this. We always try to surpass our last batch of rails." Competition is valuable, but it also has its dangerous side, as it can sometimes lead to sacrificing real value in favor of mere appearance. True competition lies in self-improvement, with the individual seeking to surpass their own past. This approach leads to genuine inner growth. Self-confidence develops through this process and, in turn, strengthens self-confidence even more. When an individual feels this way about their own progress and possibilities, they can almost mold their life as they wish. One must not fall into despair at the dangers and difficulties that arise, for they often turn out to be less threatening than they seem, like the stone lions on Bunyan's path. When you approach them, they pose no danger. A truly self-sufficient man does not live in the shadow of others' greatness. He thinks for himself, depends on himself, and acts for himself. By focusing this way on his own being, he does not close his eyes to the stimuli, light, and new life that come through warm gestures, kind words, and sincere expressions of true friendship. However, true friendship is rare, and its value is most evident in moments of crisis, like a lifeboat. Many friends who claim to be lifeboats have proven to be useless and leaky when the storm of adversity strikes. In these critical moments of life, a man's strength lies within, and the more he depends on himself, the stronger he becomes and is able to help others in their times of need. His own life will become a constant source of support and strength for others as he embodies the living lesson of dignity and self-sufficiency. Chapter 5. Failure as Success. At times it takes heroic courage to face what seems to be a vain effort to pick up the broken threads of a life of labor, to look bravely toward the future, and to move forward with determination on our path. However, what may seem to us like an irreparable failure is often just the beginning of an even greater success. In its ruins may hide the foundation of a powerful purpose or reveal new and elevated possibilities. A few years ago, an attempt was made to send logs from Canada to New York using an innovative method. Mr. Joggins's ingenious plan involved joining large logs with cables and iron beams and towing the load with a raft. When the novel vessel approached New York and success seemed certain, a terrible storm broke out. In the fury of the storm, the iron bands broke as if they were glass, and the raging waters scattered the logs everywhere. The head of the hydrographic department in Washington learned of the failure of the experiment and immediately sent a message to ship captains worldwide, urging them to carefully observe the logs he described and record their exact location in terms of latitude and longitude, as well as the time of the observation. Hundreds of captains sailing the waters of the Earth recorded their observations in the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean, and the South Seas. As these adventurers sailed across the waters, hundreds of reports were collected, spanning weeks and months. These observations were carefully compared, systematized, and tabulated, leading to discoveries about the course of ocean currents that would have otherwise been impossible. The loss of the Joggins raft was not a true failure, as it led to one of the great advances in marine geography and modern navigation. Often, in our superiority of knowledge, we tend to speak condescendingly of the ancient alchemists. However, their inability to transmute base metals into gold led to the birth of chemistry. Though they didn't achieve what they set out to do, they popularized natural processes like sublimation, filtration, distillation, and crystallization. They invented valuable instruments such as the alembic, the retort, the sand bath, and the water bath. They are credited with the discovery of antimony, sulfuric ether, and phosphorus, the cupellation technique for gold and silver, the understanding of the properties of saltpeter, and its use in the making of gunpowder, as well as the process of distilling essential oils. This was the triumph of failure, a wonderful natural process leading to the highest growth. A powerful lesson of comfort, strength, and encouragement, if only humans realize and accept it. Numerous failures lead us to higher achievements than we had imagined. Life is a constant succession of successes forged from setbacks. In the case of the discovery of America, Christopher Columbus experienced a complete failure. His keen reasoning and experiments led him to believe that by sailing west, he would reach India. Every Native American carries in their name the indelible mark of Columbus's failure, as they were called Indians. The Genoese navigator did not reach India, and the cargo of souvenirs he brought back to Spain as proof of success actually testified to his failure. However, the discovery of America represented a triumph greater than finding a backdoor to India. When David Livingstone completed his theological training and supplemented his education with a medical course, he was ready to enter the missionary field. For more than 3 years, he had studied tirelessly, focusing all his energy on one purpose: spreading the gospel in China. The time came when he was ready to embrace the mission with noble enthusiasm, dedicating himself entirely to his selfless ambition. However, news came from China about the Opium War, making it imprudent to attempt entry into the country. Despite the initial disillusionment and failure, Livingstone did not falter. He soon offered himself as a missionary in Africa and was accepted. His magnificent failure in China opened the doors to an entire continent for the light of truth. His training proved to be perfect preparation for his work as a doctor, explorer, teacher, and evangelist in the jungles of Africa. Business setbacks and the failure of his partner imposed an even greater burden of responsibility on the broad shoulders, exceptional honor, and integrity of Sir Walter Scott, which drove him to write. Failure led him to a nearly superhuman effort. His historical Scottish fiction masterpieces, which have moved, entertained, and elevated millions of people, are a glorious monument amidst what seemed to be an obvious failure. When Millet, the painter of Angelus, worked on his almost divine canvas, where the very air seems to pulsate with the essence of spiritual reverence, he fought against time, faced pain, and challenged death. His brushstrokes, applied early in the morning before his humble job as a railway porter, and in the evening, as he immortalized it on his canvas, represented strength, sustenance, and medicine for his dying wife, whom he adored. The artistic failure that plunged him into poverty amazingly unified all the finest aspects of his being. This rare spiritual unity, this purification of triviality, as he passed through the adversity of poverty, trial, and pain, endowed his brush with eloquence, enabling him to paint as never before. Something prosperity could never have made possible. Failure is often the breaking point, the turning of circumstances that propels us to higher levels. It is not necessarily about financial success or fame. Often, it is new sources of spiritual, moral, or intellectual inspiration that change us for the rest of our lives. Life is not reduced to what seduces us, but to what we extract from it. Whether one has experienced wealth or poverty, failure or success, it matters little once it has passed. There remains one single question to face with courage and honesty as an individual, deep within, with their conscience and their destiny. How shall I allow this wealth or poverty to affect me? If that trial or hardship has made me better, more authentic, more noble, then poverty has been wealth, and failure has been success. If wealth has made me vain, arrogant, disdainful, without compassion, cynical, closing my heart to the tenderness of life and to opportunities to do good for others, turning me into a mere custodian of a bag of money, then wealth has lied to me. It has been a failure, not a success. It has not been wealth, but a dark, treacherous poverty that has robbed me of myself. Everything becomes what we choose to take from it. Failure is one of the instructors of divinity. It is the experience that guides humans toward higher levels. It is the revelation of a path, a road unknown to us until then. The greatest men in the world, those who have achieved the greatest real successes, contemplate with serene satisfaction their past failures. The turn of time shows all things in a wonderfully illuminated and satisfying perspective. Today, many men are grateful that some insignificant achievement they struggled for in the past faded when they tried to hold on to it. Failure often lays the foundation for true success. If, at some stage in life, a man can say, "Those failures were the best thing that could have happened to me," then he should face new failures with unwavering courage and trust that the amazing power of nature can transform those new obstacles into new stepping stones. Often our greatest aspirations fade to prepare us for something better. The failure of the caterpillar marks the birth of the butterfly. The transformation of the cocoon gives rise to the rose. The death or destruction of the seed is the prelude to its rebirth as wheat. It is during the nights, in the darkest hours before dawn, when plants grow strongest and increase in size. Perhaps this is one of the kind lessons that nature offers to humanity, that in moments of failure one grows better. From the darkness comes the light of success. We should fear only the failure of not living rightly according to what we see, leaving the results under the tutelage of the infinite. If we reflect on the supreme moments of our lives, on the great successes and the dear people, and then consider how we came to those moments, successes and friendships, we will be surprised and strengthened by the revelation. By tracing each of these aspects back, step by step, through the genealogy of circumstances, we will see how logical the course of our joy and success has been. Starting from sadness and failure, we will discover that what brings us the greatest happiness today is intrinsically connected to what once caused us sorrow. Many of the rivers of our greatest prosperity and growth have their origin and increase in the dark and gloomy corners of our failure. There is no honest and sincere work done with a constant purpose that truly fails. If at any moment it seems that our effort is in vain, it will give us a new lesson on how to move forward. The secrets of our failures will show us the inspirations for possible successes. The man who lives according to the highest ideals, always striving to the fullest, in continuous harmony with them, is a success, regardless of the statistics of failure that a short-sighted or half-blind world of critics and commentators might throw at him. Noble ideals and worthy efforts make apparent failures insignificant and should not discourage us. Instead, they should be sources of renewed strength. Often, the rocky path proves to be safer than the slippery path of ease. Birds do not fly better with the wind at their backs than against it. Ships do not advance with calm when their sails lazily flap against the masts without tension. The alchemy of nature that surpasses that of the alchemists constantly transforms the lowest elements of failure into the pure gold of future success, as long as the worker's mind remains faithful, constant, and tireless in service and possesses that sublime courage that defies fate in its hardest moments while doing the best they can. Chapter 6. Doing your best at all times. Life is a wonderfully complex problem for every individual until, at some moment of illumination, one realizes that it can be simplified. Although never completely, it can indeed be made more bearable. Throughout history, thousands of mysteries regarding good and evil have challenged the wise in the depths of the great fundamental questions of humanity. No philosophy has fully reached its essence. Voices of passionate seekers of truth try to break the silence beyond the grave, but only receive an empty echo, a repetition of their unanswered cries. We all occasionally face the great questioning of despair that darkens our horizon and our efforts. Does God really exist? Does eternal justice govern the world? We say, why is life the way it is? Why do some suffer from hunger while others feast? Why does virtue often languish in the shadows while vice triumphs in the sunlight? Why is honest effort pursued by failure, while success based on deceit and dishonor receives applause in the world? Why is a kind father taken by death, while a useless, inconsequential individual is spared? Why is there so much unnecessary pain, suffering, and affliction in the world? Or indeed, why should there be at all? Neither philosophy nor religion can offer a definitive and satisfying answer that can be logically demonstrated or absolutely proven. There always remains, even after the best explanations, a residue of the inexplicable. Therefore, we must resort to eternal faith and be wise enough to say, these mysteries of life will not confuse me. I will not allow them to plunge me into doubt, nor obscure my existence with vagueness and uncertainty. Humankind attributes much to itself when demanding a complete solution from the infinite for all its mysteries. Founding my life on the solid base of a fundamental truth, this glorious creation, with its countless marvelous phenomena, always in harmony with the eternal law, must have a creator. That creator must be omniscient and omnipotent. But that creator cannot, in justice, demand more from any creature than the best that person can offer. Each day, at every moment, I will do the best I can with the light I have. I will always seek a greater understanding of the truth and live in harmony with that truth as I perceive it. If failure comes, I will face it with courage. If my path enters the shadow of trials, sorrow, and suffering, I will maintain the peace and serenity of one who has given the best of themselves, who can look back without regrets, and who has the courage to face the results, whatever they may be, knowing that nothing could have been done differently. On this life plan, these foundations, the human being can build any superstructure of religion or philosophy that they diligently wish to build. It must add to their equipment for living all the strength and inspiration, whether moral, mental, or spiritual, that is at their disposal. Securing this simple faith in action does not oppose any creed, nor does it replace it. It is simply a fundamental belief, a fortress, a refuge to which the individual can turn for strength when the battle of life becomes difficult. A theory of life that remains on the mere theoretical plane is as useful to a person as a menu with golden edges to a hungry sailor. A raft in the middle of the ocean is irritating, but not stimulating. Any rule for a higher life will help a person not the slightest bit until it is internalized and made their own, until it is practiced in their daily life, until that seed of theory in their mind blossoms into 1,000 flowers of thought, word, and action. An individual who sincerely seeks to live in the best possible way at all times will make that determination visible in every aspect of their life. No triviality in their existence can be considered too insignificant to reflect their principle of life. The sun illuminates and beautifies a fallen leaf at the edge of the path with the same impartiality as the peak of a mountain in the Alps. Every drop of water in the ocean is a summary of the chemistry of the entire ocean. Each drop is subject to the same laws that govern the immensity of billions of drops that make up that marvelous phenomenon of nature that humans call the ocean. No matter how modest a person's vocation may be, how uninteresting or monotonous their routine of duties may seem, they must give their utmost effort. They must dedicate their work with the mind they devote to it. They must breathe life into every small amount of power, energy, skill, or opportunity they have, preparing to rise to the highest responsibilities when they come. This will not lead the individual to a weak complacency that settles for what has been handed to them. Instead, it will fill their mind with a divine discontent that joyfully accepts the best, even as a temporary substitute for something still better. The man who always strives to do better is an insightful, active, alert, and determined individual, always concerned with the smallest details. His standard is not, "What will the world think of me?" but, "Is this worthy of me?" Edwin Booth, one of the greatest actors on the American stage, never allowed himself to adopt an ungraceful attitude, not even in his private life. In this simple aspect, he always lived at his best level. On stage, every movement of his was a natural grace. Those in his company who were aware of his movements were the clumsy ones, trying in public to undo or disguise their lack of grace in their gestures and movements. In daily life, the individual who is careless and inconsiderate in their speech, whose vocabulary is a collection of bland clichés, whose choice of phrases and exaggerated interjections only disguise a lack of ideas, will never shine in an occasion where they wish to stand out. Living the best possible way is a constant preparation for instant use. One can never be too precise, restricted, affected, or picky. Education in its highest form is the conscious training of the mind or body to act unconsciously. It implies the deliberate formation of mental habits, not simply the accumulation of information. One of the reckless ways in which people eclipse themselves is through the cult of the luck fetish. They feel that everyone else is lucky, while everything they try ends in failure. They fail to realize the relentless energy, the fragile concentration, the heroic courage, and the sublime patience that are the secret to the success of some individuals. The luck of these people lies in the fact that they had prepared themselves to rise to the occasion when opportunities came, and they were awake enough to recognize and seize them. Instead, their own opportunity came and went unnoticed, while they remained lost in dreams of unexpected riches that would fall into their hands. Consequently, they become disheartened and envy those they should emulate, selling their abilities and dulling their energies. They perform their duties superficially, or wander through life trying a variety of activities. The honest and persevering fighter must always understand that failure is only an episode in the life of a true man, never the whole story. Although it is never easy to face and no philosophy can prevent it, the firm determination to master circumstances rather than lament them will help him on his way, always enabling him to make the most of what he has. He is unaware of the long series of failures overcome that solidified the success of others. He doesn't comprehend the price some rich people heroically paid, becoming the football of discontented politicians and demagogues because of their wealth and position. The man who harbors pessimistic doubts about everything, who demands a certified guarantee for his future, who always fears that his work will not be recognized or appreciated, or that in the end it's not worth it, will never live up to his true potential. He is dulling his capacity for real progress in his hypnotic excuses for inaction, rather than feeding his spirit with solid reasons for action. One of the most debilitating aspects of individual constitution is surrendering to the arrival of age. Self-confidence weakens and dies before the fear of growing old. This new way of thinking responds to any suggestion pointing to superior development with, "It's good, it's what we need. I'm glad it's available for my children. I would have been happy to have had this help when I was in school, but now I'm an older man." This is nothing more than closing life to wonderful possibilities in a blind way. The bell of missed opportunity never rings in this life. It is never too late to recognize the truth and live according to it. It only requires greater effort, more attention, and deeper dedication. But the impossible does not exist for the one who trusts in himself and is willing to pay the price in time and effort for success or development later in life. Tests become more difficult on the path of progress, just like life insurance premiums. But this does not matter for that powerful self-confidence, which does not grow old as long as knowledge can keep it young. Socrates, when his hair turned white with the years, learned to play musical instruments. Cato, at 80, began studying Greek, and Plutarch, at the same age, started his first Latin lessons. The character of the man, a masterpiece of Theophrastus, began to be written on the day of his 80th birthday. Kenbury's stories of Shower were written in the last years of his life. Ronsard, considered the father of French poetry, did not develop his poetic talent until he was nearly 50 years old. Benjamin Franklin, at that age, took his first significant steps in the philosophical field. Arnold, theologian and scholar, translated Josephus when he was 80 years old. Winckelmann, one of the most prominent writers on classical antiquities, came from a humble background and lived in darkness and ignorance for much of his life. The English philosopher Hesse published his version of the Odyssey at 87 and his version of the Iliad the following year. The eminent French scientist who tirelessly worked in the field of color enriched the world with his labor, remaining busy, enthusiastic, and active until death called him at 103 years old. These men boldly defied the passage of time. Among the many famous names that challenged the ravages of age, they should serve as sources of hope and motivation for those whose confidence and courage falter. The path to truth, a fuller life, and complete development at every stage of life never closes, unless one decides to close it. A man must feel this deeply, believe in it, and turn that belief into a real present force in his life. Then his progress will be unlimited. All he has to do is live the best he can at every moment and rest in peace, regardless of the results of his efforts. Constantly looking back at what could have been, instead of focusing on what can be, undermines self-confidence. Worrying about a past that can no longer be changed weakens efforts towards future development that allows reaching the fullness of individual possibilities. Nature, in her love and tenderness, whispers to the man exhausted and weary from the struggle, "Do the best you can with what you have at this moment. Do it with the wisest preparation your mind can conceive for the future, and use all the light of accumulated knowledge from the past as your guide. If you do this, you will have given the best of yourself. The past is no longer within your reach. It is unchangeable. No concern, struggle, or despair can alter it. It is beyond your control, like 1,000,000 years in eternity behind you. Turn all that past, with its dark moments, weaknesses, and mistakes, into trust in the future with hope. Transform every small action in the present into a new past that fills you with joy. Let every action be a greater, nobler, and more perfect preparation for the future. The present and what you can do with it belong to you. The past has returned with its lessons, its history, and its records to the God who lent you those precious moments for you to use in harmony with his law. Chapter 7. The Royal Road to Happiness. Prince Bismarck, one of the most prominent statesmen of the 19th century, stated, "Throughout my life, I have not experienced a single day of happiness." Despite 83 years of wealth, fame, honors, power, influence, prosperity, and success, he never knew true happiness. Happiness is a natural paradox. It can flourish in any soil and survive in any circumstance. It defies external conditions and arises from the depths of our being, like light and warmth emanating from the sun. Happiness is not about having things, but about being something. It is not about possessing, but about enjoying. It is the warm glow of a heart at peace with itself. Even a martyr on the pyre can experience a happiness that a king on his throne might envy. The human being is the architect of his own happiness, a fragrance that emanates from his vivid life in harmony with noble ideals. What one has may depend on others, but what one is depends only on oneself. What is acquired in life is only possession, while what is achieved is growth. Happiness resides in the joy of the soul for the intangible. Absolute, perfect, and constant happiness is unattainable, as it would mean the culmination of achievements and the complete fulfillment of destiny. Happiness is paradoxical because it can coexist with trials, pain, and poverty. It is the joy of the heart that rises above all circumstances. Happiness breaks down into various aspects: gratification, satisfaction, contentment, and pleasure, all of which are skilled imitators that often simulate their appearance rather than following their true method. Gratification is achieved when our desires align with our possessions, but it is always incomplete. A grateful acceptance of a portion of what we want is a mental pleasure based on the quality of what we receive, but it is dissatisfaction in terms of quantity. Although it may be a component of happiness, by itself, it does not constitute happiness. And satisfaction implies the perfect alignment between our desires and what we have. However, this harmony is fleeting, as each achievement of an ideal gives rise to new desires. Each advance unveils vast, unexplored territories, and each accomplishment stimulates new ambitions. Over time, desires and possessions cease to be identical, and dissatisfaction arises. Even if someone possessed everything in the material world, it would not guarantee happiness because happiness resides in the satisfaction of the soul, not of the mind or body. Dissatisfaction, in its highest sense, is the engine of progress, the signal of new aspirations, and the promise of continuous revelation of new possibilities. Conformity is a virtue that is often overvalued. It is like a diluted form of despair, a feeling that leads us to accept substitutes instead of striving to achieve authentic realities. Contentment causes the conforming people to accept what is unsatisfactory and try to convince themselves that it is the best. It allows them to savor memories of past joy that exist only in memory. Contentment acts as a mental and moral sedative that reduces a person's will to rise to higher levels of life and growth. An individual should never settle for less than what their best efforts can achieve. While contentment may make the world more comfortable, it can also signify the halting of progress. We should view each step of progress as a station in our journey, being content with it as a step, but never satisfied as a destination. There may be times when we must be satisfied with what we have, but never with what we are. However, satisfaction is not the same as happiness, nor is pleasure. Pleasure is fleeting, while happiness is continuous. Pleasure is a musical note, while happiness is a whole symphony. Pleasure can exist even when consciousness protests, but happiness is never affected. Pleasure may have its ups and downs, but neither of them are found in the cup of happiness. The human being is the only one capable of experiencing true happiness. The rest of creation only knows weak imitations. Happiness represents the peaceful harmony between life and the level of life. It cannot be directly attained by the individual for themselves. It is rather a byproduct of an altruistic life. No one can make their own happiness the sole goal of their existence and control it, just as one cannot jump over the farthest shadow of their own being. If you wish to attain happiness, aim beyond it. Place other things above your own happiness, and it will surely come to you. You can buy pleasure, acquire satisfaction, and feel content, but true happiness is not for sale. It is the inseparable companion of an authentic, quiet, and peaceful life that is not immersed in worry or desperate struggle. The foundation of happiness lies in love for something beyond oneself. If you look at all cases of happiness in the world, you will discover that when all secondary details are removed, the constant and unchanging element of love always exists. The love of parents for their children, the love between a man and a woman, the love for humanity in any of its forms, or the love for a great work in which an individual invests all their energies. Happiness is the voice of optimism, faith, and sincere and firm love. A cynic or pessimist can never truly be happy. The cynic is morally short-sighted and takes pride in it, seeing the evil in their own heart and believing the world is the same. They let a small imperfection eclipse all the good. An incorrigible cynic is someone who should wish for death. believing that life cannot bring them happiness, but death can. The key to Bismarck's unhappiness lay in his deep distrust of human nature. There is a path to true happiness that resides in consecration, concentration, conquest, and consciousness. Consecration involves dedicating one's life to the service of others, to a noble cause, or to the realization of altruistic goals. Life must not be merely lived, but lived with purpose. It is a privilege, not a burden imposed by decades on earth. Consecration places the purpose of life above the mere pursuit of wealth as the main goal. Those who are selfless, kind, loving, helpful, and willing to relieve the burdens of those around them, inspire those who struggle, and sometimes forget themselves to help others are on the right path to happiness. Consecration is always active, bold, and aggressive, and only fears the possibility of betraying high ideals. Concentration simplifies and deepens individual life, removing distractions and the superficialities of modern life, focusing on the essentials. Worries, useless remorse, and any waste that undermines mental, moral, or physical energy must be sacrificed, as otherwise the individual would squander half of their life opportunities. A meaningful purpose in life, something that unites all the threads of daily thought and eliminates the worry over small trials, pains, sufferings, and mistakes, is essential for concentration. In battle, soldiers can forget their wounds or not even notice them when inspired by what they consider right. Concentration elevates a humble life and makes it something grand and sublime. In moral terms, it is a path to simplicity, leading the individual to do good for the sake of good, without thinking of policies or rewards. It offers calm and rest, a serenity that is the glow of the sun of happiness. Conquest involves overcoming bad habits, rising above opposition and attacks, and experiencing spiritual elevation by resisting the material temptations of life. Sometimes, when you feel exhausted and weakened by the struggle, when justice seems a distant dream, and honesty, loyalty, and truth seem to lack value, it is then that you must cling to the sublime faith that righteousness will prevail. In those moments, you must overcome doubts and despair, master yourself to master the world around you. This is what is meant by conquest. This is what matters. Even a log can be carried by the current, but it takes a man to face an opposing tide that threatens to carry his ship far off course. When you face jealousy, intrigue, meanness, and misunderstandings in life, you must rise above them. You must be like a lighthouse that illuminates and beautifies the raging and tumultuous waves of the storm that surround you, those that try to undermine and destroy you. That is conquest. When you are presented with the opportunity to obtain fame, wealth, success, or the fulfillment of your desires at the expense of your honor or principles, and it does not affect you enough to even tempt you, you have triumphed. That too is conquest, and conquest is part of the path to happiness. Consciousness, as a mentor, guide, and compass for every action, always leads to happiness. When you can be alone with your conscience and gain its approval without resorting to force or deceitful logic, you begin to understand what true happiness is. However, you must ensure that you do not appeal to a conscience dulled or numbed by bad actions and the consequent deafness of its owner. An individual who sincerely seeks to live their life in consecration, concentration, and conquest, doing the best they can day by day according to the light they have, can fully trust their conscience. They can close their ears to what the world says and find in the approval of their own conscience the highest earthly authority, the voice of the infinite in communion with the individual. Unhappiness arises from the desire to obtain, while happiness comes from the desire to give. True happiness always carries the nuance of overcoming sorrow, the feeling that pain softens with the passage of time, and the punishment of loss transforms into love and sympathy toward others and the mystery of time. If a person set out to dedicate just one day to bringing happiness, to making life brighter, sweeter, and more joyful, not for themselves but for others, they would discover a wonderful revelation about what true happiness really means. Even the greatest hero in the world could not achieve as much through a series of heroic acts as someone who, throughout their life, strives day by day to make others happy. Each day should be an opportunity for new purpose, new energy, and renewed enthusiasm. Just for today could be the daily motto of thousands of societies around the world, formed by people united to make the world a better place through simple, constant acts of kindness, sweetness, and love. Happiness would come to them in its highest and purest form, not because they selfishly pursued it, but because they radiated happiness around them.